to my channel, Bobo Buns So Vintage Life. I'm Lisa. Thank you for joining me again if you're back, and thank you also for joining me if this is your first time here. I hope you really enjoy what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to be looking at this fabulous Rita blouse here by Charm Patterns, designed by the lovely Gertie. Now, this is something I've gone to loads and loads of times, so I'll be showing you a few of those. And what I'm looking at today is how you alter the blouse into a dress, so it's pattern hacking, but also how you lengthen and shorten parts of a pattern. So I'll be doing it on the bodice, the blouse into a bodice, but that'll relate to other patterns as well. So a few people had asked me and said they thought they'd find that interesting. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I will show you my design process of how I came up with the dress that I'll show you at the end, which I've made and I am just so thrilled about, and I can't wait to share it with you because it's a beauty. You know how each dress can be the one you really love, but this one, when I finished this dress, it was my favourite. This is another new favourite, so can't wait to show you. So I shall be back in a moment, and then we shall dive into all the bits and bobs that I've got to share with you. When I'm thinking of something I want to make, often I have the fabric there and I know what I want it to be, and other times I have to wait, for it to come to me. I absolutely love the gingham, and I wanted a picnic dress, and the more I thought about it, I thought this is what this blue gingham here was going to be. So can you see this blue gingham with the rick-rack? And I draw out my design, my idea, and noting which patterns I'm going to use and which design decisions. So it's all there drawn up. That's my Rita picnic dress, so that's what we're going to be making. Now, I talked about my love of the Rita blouse in my go-to patterns video quite a while back now. Ever since it first came out, I've jumped on it, and it's just such a fabulous, versatile pattern because not only do you get the blouse, I've managed to hack it into a sundress, into a wiggle dress, into dresses with three-tiered floaty skirts, with box pleat skirts, A-line skirts, just you name it, putting piping in, just adding bows, changing the sleeves. I've done loads to it. I find it so versatile. It's a style I really love. I think it suits a hell of a lot of people. And for the blouse alone, I can get that out of 1 metre of fabric. So especially if I find just a small amount of vintage fabric, I know I can get a Rita blouse out of it. This red one here is out of a lovely vintage brushed cotton. So it's a bit more cosy for autumn time. So that's why it's one of my favourite patterns. So I thought I'd show you the original blouse, even though I've added a bow on here. But everything else is as the pattern was designed, other than the alterations that I've made. So I've got a long hair tickling my ear, and it's got the original side zip, which was great, when you're doing your dresses, but the zip comes from the bottom up, and when we're putting a dress zip in, obviously it comes from the top down. So I've got that, and many moons later I turned the Rita blouse into a sundress, so I'll show you that in a moment. So I thought I'd make it into a little sun top too, and this is the most amazing 1940s cotton I got from Donna Flower Vintage Fabrics. So I made myself a little floral sun top. So I'll show you a picture of me wearing that as well when we went to the beach. It's great with a pair of shorts. Yeah, and I've got some piping in there, just some red piping. This one isn't ironed, just grabbed this out of the ironing pile, it's a favourite. Pink gingham, got the piping here around the sleeves and around the midriff, little bows up here. So all I had to do, because I was thinking about this one day, this part of the Rita is where the sleeves are attached. So I thought if I don't put the sleeves in, and obviously you put less elastic in there, they had the front and back bodices, so you'd finish off the elastic so it's sealed either end, and I just added straps to it. That's all you have to do to turn it into a sundress. You could do any type of strap, whether you wanted ones that tie in the bow, thin straps, wider straps. So that's what I did, and I've got a box pleat skirt on that one. And then I've got another one that I did. This is just a simple, everyday sundress. It's like a silvery blue, it's quite mermaidy fabric. the red one that I talked about in last week's video, and I've got the bows on the waist here, and I did lengthen the skirt, so I'm really happy. I picked all that. Now the skirt's a bit longer, which I'm happy with. This is another easy everyday. It's in a lovely linen, really lightweight linen. So that's a really simple one. And this other one that I talked about in last week's video, where I don't really like the sleeves on it. It was an experiment, so I just wear jumpers over it. And then I've got the green one I made with the tiered skirt, which I think I wore maybe last week's video or one before. And I've got my fabulous black one with the tiered skirt, and I've got a wiggle dress version. Whoops, they don't always stay up. So it's something that I'm really having a lot of play with, and I know there'll be more readers in my life. So let me know if it's something you really love. I'd love to know. Right, so we better get on with the exciting process of cutting those patterns, haven't we? Now I'm starting on the bodice. I've got the upper front here, and I need to lengthen it because the bust part that gathers comes about 4 inches above my bust, so I need to lengthen it. Because it's on the fold, I'm doing it at a lengthened line at 90-degree angle, and then I'm going to put the other pattern piece at the back, match that up with the notch, so I make sure that I do that lengthened line at the same point so that all my notches will match up. So I'm just making a mark there, and then I'll draw that 90-degree angle line again the same way. So when things are on a fold, you always draw against the fold line with a 90-degree angle, and when you've got a grain line, you would do your 90-degree line off that the grain line, you know, to make your new cutting lines for lengthening or shortening a pattern. And as you can see, I'm using the non-iron interfacing, which I love to trace all my patterns off. I've already altered this pattern, but I traced them off so that I could show you how to do it. So then I'll cut through, and because it's so flexible, you can't obviously sellotape on it, so I'll just pin the extra in that I want to, you know, add to it. So I'll pin that in, and when I'm happy with it, I'll sew all those pieces up so that I have this as my finished pattern, if that makes sense. Then after that, I'm just trying to find where my seam gauge is so that I can measure down. So I think it's 1.5 inches I'm adding on this, can't remember now. Anyway, it could be different for you, but don't worry if that pattern, I lay the pattern on me, and then I can see, you know, where it should be, and then I'll measure the distance. I often have that because I'm very long in my upper body. You see, I just knocked the camera there, sorry about the wobble. So I'll just draw a neat line so that I can add the bottom of my pattern. So I'll balance up the whole pattern on the fold line, if that's centre front. I'm just drawing a bit of a line in with the sleeve, and then I'll just add that in when I've got the other bit pinned on. Sorry if I'm a bit sniffly, I've got hay fever at the moment, so if you can hear sniffing in the background, that's why. Most apologies. Right, so that's all pinned, and that's the first one done. Then I'll do the same for the back, and we're good to go. I've told you before, I like the neckline being a bit higher on the Rita. I find as the pattern's drafted, it comes down and it looks like quite a square neckline. So I've decided probably about a year ago to add 6/8 of an inch, so 3/4 of an inch to the top of both of my bodice pieces. And then I'll add the same to the top of the sleeve so it all match up. It just makes the neckline a bit higher, and I get more of a round shape, which I love, you know, more of that peasant style. Which reminds me, when my eldest daughter saw the drawing of what I was going to do, she said, "Oh, why are you making like a German peasant dress, Mum?" I said, "I'm making a very fun, elegant 50s fun dress, summer dress." But there we go. So that's both of the pieces all done, and they're all ready to go. So next I'm going to alter the sleeve. I want to add that 3/4 of an inch to the top, where it will match the neckline, but I also want to lengthen the sleeve. So first off, I'll add that bit to the top, just so that all those seam lines match up nicely. got rid of that original line that I don't want. Now I want to lengthen the sleeve a bit because I'm going to add in an elastic channel so I can have a bit more of a little frilled ruffle below that. So I'm lengthening the grain line so that it will match up when I cut the pattern. Then I'm drawing my lengthening line, can't say it, at 90-degree angle to the grain line. So you can see, just making sure that's even on both sides. And that's the line then that I will cut. So a lot of patterns will have the lengthen and shorten line at the points you need them, but if they don't have them, then obviously you need to know where to put them at the right point to balance it, to lengthen a pattern. You wouldn't just add extra to the bottom. I know I've added to the top of these this pattern, but that's just a small amount, but normally you would open up the whole pattern, so that's what I'm doing here. I can't remember how much extra I put in this. Again, it might be about 2 inches, but who knows? Sorry, I'm being a bit vague on the measurements I added. I mean, that's obviously down to personal preference. You know, you'd need to measure your own arm and decide at what point you want your sleeve to finish. So as before, I'm just pinning that extra bit in that fills the gap, you know, the lovely slash and spread method of pattern adjusting. So I've filled in my gap, and then I'll measure down the distance I want. Just make sure I've got that grain line drawn in, and then I'll measure down. There you go, I'm writing down the amount that I lengthened it by. It's 4 centimetres, 1.5 inches. Obviously just did that so I wouldn't forget, so that's handy. I obviously knew future me, talking over this video, would not remember. Then I'll just neatly draw in that line that I've done, then I've got that to match the bottom of the sleeve too. Then you've got your grain line, you know, to match the end of that the pattern to make sure everything's balanced in the right place. So often when you lengthen and shorten considerably, you will then have to properly grade in the lines to make sure the pattern is all balanced, you know, that everything matches up properly. Because it just sort of puts it off kilter a little bit by the time you've lengthened or shortened something. But this won't be a huge amount because, you know, it's not a huge wobbly pen. It's not a huge difference I've made in it. Can't think of the word I want there. There we have it, the finished sleeve. Now this is the part where we're turning the blouse into a dress bodice. So I've got the waistband pieces, which I need to shorten so that they will fit the waistband for a skirt. So I'm starting on the centre pieces first, which are on the fold line. So we'll do our 90-degree angle off the fold line. And the pattern does say where the waistline is. I think mine was slightly different, so I did measure down, removing the seam allowance from the top, and then measured down where my waistline would be and made a mark on the pattern already. And that's where I'm drawing my first line, and then I'm going to measure down below that to add my seam allowance. So my 1.5 centimetres, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that's where I'll then be cutting the pattern off, so that I'll just have those pieces that work for a dress bodice. Now when we're working on the side pieces, they're all cut slightly on the bias, so the grain line's just off so at an angle, so make sure that, you know, you're drawing your lengthened shortened line 90 degrees angle to that grain line, again where I'd marked the waistline. just finishing up doing that on the other piece. And then I'll add the seam allowances again as I had before, same seam allowance. Sorry I seem slow about this. I could have sped this up for you, but I just want to make sure you see all the details of it. So I'd still have those notches in there. Look at the state of my hands now. Always got covered in black ink. All I ever seem to be doing is drawing patterns. Right, so I'll just cut those off. Don't need the bottom bit anymore, but I'm usually quite lazy and I just put them together, you know, as a, rather than separate pattern pieces, I'll just put them together on the cloth when I'm cutting out, whether it be a blouse or a bodice. So I'm just making sure that they all match up and they all balance. So if I'm not happy with see that top bit, so that'll need to be added in a little bit. So I will just need to balance all of those up. Now for cutting out the fabric, I didn't have quite enough, so to be very, very creative and tried out lots of different ways of laying the pattern to get what I could. And surprisingly, I pretty much pattern matched in most places, so I'm really thrilled. And you can see I use pattern weights. I prefer those to pinning a pattern to the cloth because I don't like when you lift up the cloth, you tend to disturb it and put ripples. So I like pattern weights, then I'll use my hands to hold the pattern. It just works better for me. You'll see how close I'm having to come in from where I cut the previous piece. This really was hit or miss whether I was going to make this work with this fabric, and I'm so, so happy that I managed it. Now when I sew, I like to pin everything I can at the beginning. So I'd pinned the skirts together, leaving the back seam open. I'd pinned all the bodice, the underarm seams, all of those bits. So I've already been sewing the bits. I've got the skirt ready. I've made the pockets and turned those. And as you can see, top stitched around the opening. And I was just matching up the markings just to see how the pockets will lay. And it was as I was doing this, I got another idea. After pinning the pockets on to start sewing them, I realised that it's going to look more balanced having rickrack around the pockets as well as at the neckline. And luckily I found enough extra in my tins, so just pinning it on just to see what it looks like, and I know I'm going to like it. So straight on the machine to get that rickrack sewn on the pocket, super speedy. Now I'm attaching the bodice to the midriff section. I'm pulling up the bust gathers, and then that'll be ready to sew. So I've got my bodice pieces here, that's all sewn up, and I've got the skirt ready. The pockets are on the front ready to sew, and then I'll be able to put those two together. Right, so the dress is all coming together really well. I've put all the bodice together and I've sewn the channel, so just overlocked rather than turning under. So overlocked the edge, and then I've sewn the channel for the elastic. So where's my elastic gone so I can show you? It's all tied up with other bits. So I've got the width of the elastic, it's wider than I normally use. And so I've measured that, so I've got enough to run it in. And then I've pinned rickrack all the way around the flat after I've sewn that, and I've sewn the rickrack on, then I'll put the elastic in. And I've made channels for the sleeves. Now the Rita, you normally just turn it under and put it in, the elastic goes right to the edge. Lately I've been enjoying making an elastic channel, so I just get a little bit of a frill going on below that. So that's what I've done. So that's all ready to go, put the elastic in, and then when the skirt's finished, attach that to the skirt, then put the zip in, hem it, and we're good to go. So with the skirt, I've placed the pockets on. I've added rickrack to those two. They're all in place, ready to sew on. Now I've sewn the rickrack on. And then I'll open up this side seam. I always just sew that up just roughly to put the pocket on. Then I'll open that up because I've got to put the zip in there. I've got to sew up the back seam. Obviously I need the skirt out flat so you can put the pockets on. So I'll sew the back seam up. And then what have I got to do? Also construct some bows. Now I didn't have enough with this fabric, it was really hard piecing it all out, so I've salvaged some small pieces here. So I'm not sure if I'm going to make little fat bows or just sew some of these pieces together to make long thin ones. Haven't decided that yet, so I think I'll get it all together and then I'll make that decision. But that's where we're at, so really enjoying putting this together. You know, you've had that vision in your head and then it starts to become a thing. So that's where we're at. Now here we have the finished dress, which I am just totally thrilled with. Looking at you, when I just pinned up the hem, which I only finished this morning before I went out to work, I put it on and I ran into my daughter's room and said, you've got to see this, because I needed a seal of approval. I'm that thrilled with it. I just love the colour, everything about it, the details. It makes me so happy. So as you can see, I'm going to pop it on me in a bit so you'll see that as well. So I decided to put the rickrack around the neckline, and I've got some lipstick marks here typically when I was trying it on, so that's so annoying. I sewed the rickrack on. Once I'd turned over the elastic channel at the neck, I then pinned all the rickrack below that and sewed it on flat before I put the elastic in, so that's there all gathered up. I had thought about rickrack around the sleeves, but I've run out of rickrack. I may do that, I don't know, might be too much, but I quite fancy. I think this is a chuck it all on dress, it needs it. You know, as I lengthened the sleeves, so then I've got this extra little frill below, rather than, you know, how the Rita normally just has the elastic right to the end. So it's a slightly longer sleeve with that softer frill, which I find is more flattering on my upper arms. Really love that. And then as I was going along, I thought, you know what, this midriff section looks bare without the rickrack. So I added that on, and what I did, because I've got a side zip in here, and you don't want that bulk. I've done that when I've had piping and then I've had to remember to cut the piping away, else you can't do the zip up. So I attached the rickrack and I sewed it, machine sewed it from here, you know, and from that point. So I left the seam allowance plus another sort of half an inch. And then once I put my zip in, I then folded those bits underneathly and I hand sewed those in to finish. So they obviously don't quite meet. You couldn't fold them underneath because there's no way you'd do the zip up, any type of zip you put in. So it's got to be that as the solution. So that's what it looks like all the way around. I know, I'll be with you in a moment. I've got Taku crying at me. I think he wants some food. So I'll just finish telling you about the dress and then I shall go and feed him. And then we've got these glorious pockets, which is the same as the skirt that I'm wearing. You know, this is the rockabilly dress that I made for the wedding, and the rickrack's inside the pocket on these. Can you see? I'm standing up on tiptoes. Where here I wanted to make more of a feature of it, so I put the rickrack all the way around the pocket, and I did a bigger bow. It's wider and thicker, and because I didn't have enough fabric, I've just had to piece together for each strip. There's about 3 small squares of fabric all pieced together to make these bows. So I put those on because they're quite floppy. I've stitched them in the middle and then I've stitched them back here as well so that they'll retain their structure. So all in all, I am just so pleased about this dress, and I've been really excited about sharing it with you. And yeah, I hope, you know, you'll think, oh, I'm gonna have a go at making one of those too, because oh, it's just such a delight. It gives me so much happiness, and I think I'll be wearing this tonight when I go teaching, quite frankly, because I can't wait to wear it. Right, so you need to see me in it, don't you? Just in a moment. Joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed watching the process of making the dress as much as I've enjoyed making it. I've really enjoyed sewing this one. It's been rather nice doing it with you in mind, you know, sort of speeding me along. So any questions you've got about the process, please pop them in the comments. I'll put any links that I can think of that may be relevant down below. I think that's everything for now, so until next time, thank you very much for joining me, and if you'd like to subscribe, can't say that word, please hit the bell or the notification button, whatever. Like my video, share if you'd like, and comment, and we can chat. So until next time, thank you and goodbye.